Commission. Before we get started, I would like to ask Jack Wall to lead us in prayer and Commissioner Hodson in the pledge. Would you please stand?
You don't know? Okay.
Please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today. Thank you for your guidance and wisdom. As we begin this hearing today, guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. Help us to remember our responsibility to serve our community with great insight, guided by understanding, wisdom, and respect for all. As we make decisions today, help us to promote the common good as we work together for the betterment of our great city. As trusted servants, we seek blessings on our deliberations and our efforts here today. Amen.
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 Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you, Jeff, for the prayer and the pledge. I've asked Commissioner Horsley to introduce the Planning Commission members.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To my far right, we have Kay Wilson from the City Attorney's Office. Next to Kay, we have Jack Wall. Jack's a civil engineer representing the Rose Hall District. Then we have Dr. Karen Kwasny. She's a professor of literature and cultural studies representing the Princess Anne District. My name is Don Horsley. I'm a farmer. I'm an at-large representative. And the empty seat to my left belongs to Ron Ripley. Ron's out of town on business this week, and he's in real estate management, and he's an at-large representative. The next empty seat belongs to Jan Rosdinsky. She is our secretary of our Planning Commission. She's property manager representing the Centerville District. Our chairman is Bob Thornton, the commercial real estate broker, and he represents the Lynn Haven District, and Bob is our chairman. Next to Bob, we have Dee Oliver. She's a funeral director and at-large representative, and she's our vice chairman. Then we have Jeff Hodson. Jeff's in real estate management representing the Beach District. Next to Jeff, we have Mike Inman. Mike's an attorney for real estate and developing community associate law, and he is an at-large representative also. Next to Mike, we have David Weiner. David's commercial sales representing the Kempsville District. Then we have David Redmond in commercial real estate, and Dave is representing the Bayside District. Next to Dave, we have Barry Frankenfield, who is our planning director, and he will introduce the other members of his staff. Barry?
All right, good afternoon, thank you very much. Not in direct order, but I'm just going to introduce, since we have so many people here today. Cole Fisher and Delina Cartwright were helping you out front when you came in. To my left are Pam Sandloop and Carol Dozier, who are managing the very important electoral vote duties. On the planning bench, we have Carolyn Smith, Jimmy McNamara, Jonathan Sanders, and we have with us today Kathy Warren and Mark Shea, who's our comprehensive planner, Robert Davis. We have an intern for the summer, Lane Wineset, and in the back row we have Christine Gay and Dan Adams with Public Works Engineering. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Don, for introducing the Planning Commission members. The first order of business today is the explanation of the rules. Typically, our secretary does that, but in her absence, I've asked Commissioner Dave Redmond to explain the rules for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Virginia Beach Planning Commission takes pride in being fair and courteous to all parties in attendance. It is important that all involved understand how the Commission normally conducts its meetings. It is equally important that everyone treat each other and the members of this Commission with respect and civility. The Commission requests that if you have a cell phone, please either silence it or turn it off. This is an abbreviated explanation of the rules. The complete set of rules is located in the front of the Planning Commission agenda. Following is the order of business for this public hearing. Withdrawals and deferrals. The chairman will ask if there are any requests to withdraw or defer an item on the agenda. Consideration of these requests will be made first. The consent agenda. The second order of business is the consideration of the consent agenda, which are those items that the Planning Commission believe are unopposed and which have favorable staff recommendations. The regular agenda. commission will then proceed with the remaining items on the agenda. Please note that the actions taken by the commission today are in the form of a recommendation to the Virginia Beach City Council. The final decision to approve or disapprove an application will be made by the City Council. The commission thanks you for your attendance, and we hope your experience here today leaves you feeling that you have been heard and treated fairly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Redmond. The next order of business is to address those items to be deferred. Today, we have 3 items that will be deferred. I think three. The first item is item number 4. Is there someone here to speak on item number 4? It has been brought to the chair's attention. Is there any opposition to this matter being placed on the to be deferred? Hearing none, and Kay, can we vote on these 3 at one time or each by itself?
You can vote on all three,
all
just
three.
making sure if there are any ones that have a different time period,
Okay.
that you make sure that's noted.
So there's no one here, is it no one here for item number 4 to speak on this matter? The next item that we've been made aware of is item number 8. This is an item for Nicholas and Sarah Nestor. Is there anyone to speak on this matter? Is there any opposition to this matter being placed on the deferral agenda? Hearing none, and then the last item is item number D2, an item with John and Karen Waller. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Eddie Burdon, Virginia Beach Attorney representing the Wallers, and we do consent to the deferral, and we expect to be back next month.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So we have 3 items on the consent agenda, item number 4, item number 8.
Defer.
I'm sorry, deferred, and item number D2. Do I have a motion to defer those items?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that items number 4, 8, and D2 be deferred.
Second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Horsley, second. Call for the question.
It isn't.
What's going on? Okay.
There we go.
All right. By a vote of 9-0, agenda items 4, 8, and D2 have been deferred for 30 days.
Thank you. There being no items that were requested to be withdrawn, the next order of business we will address to those items that have been placed on the consent agenda. Vice Chair Oliver will handle this portion of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This afternoon, we have 7 items on the consent agenda. The first matter is agenda item number 1, and this is an application for a conditional use permit for a family daycare center or home on property located at 600 Iris Lane in the Bayside District. Is there a representative for this application? Hi, would you please come up and state your name for the record, please?
Good morning, my name is Gina Arney.
Great, thank you very much. You can take a seat. It's good. Is there any opposition to this matter being placed on the consent agenda today? Hearing none, the chairman has asked Commissioner Don Hornsley to read this into the record, please.
Thank you, ma'am. The proposed conditional use permit for a family daycare home, staff has reviewed this extensively, and they've determined that it is consistent with the comprehensive plan and for the land uses in residential areas. It provides a valuable service for families in those areas, and it has a large lot with adequate space for the youngsters and adequate parking for the clients. Staff has recommended that we stagger the drop-off times for the families, and I think that's been agreed on. We had no opposition to this application, so for these reasons, we placed it on the consent agenda.
Thank you. The next matter is agenda item number 3. And this is an application for Beach Building Group, Inc., for an alternative compliance on property located at 521 and 523 on the 20th Street in the Beach District. Good morning. Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ms. Oliver, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Again, for the record, Eddie Burdon, Virginia Beach attorney representing the two applicants. Beach Building Group is present with Mr. Jonathan Spate. We appreciate the work of Christine on this application. All 8 conditions as recommended are acceptable to my client, and we also greatly appreciate being on the consent agenda.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any opposition to this being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chairman has asked Commissioner Hodson to read this into the record.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. The applicant is requesting alternative compliance of the oceanfront form-based code for a piece of property on 20th Street at the oceanfront. The subject site is capable of yielding up to 4 dwelling units. To accommodate garage access to each of the units, the applicant is proposing to develop the site with 3 units on 1 lot. Form-based code states that when multiple primary buildings or building types are placed on the same lot, each building must be able to meet the minimum lot criteria of its associated building type, whether or not actual lot lines exist. The proposed layout does not provide the minimum lot width or minimum lot area for the rear unit. Thus, the applicant is requesting the special exemption for alternative compliance to permit this alternative proposal. As shown on the submitted plan, 2 units are proposed on 20th Street and 1 unit is located near the alley on 20th and a half Street and centered within the site. 2 parking spaces will be provided for each unit, and all vehicular access will be from the alley. Direct pedestrian access will be provided for each unit from 20th Street. Staff finds that the proposal sufficiently meets the applicable review standards and recommends approval. The commission is in agreement with this, and we place it on our consent agenda. And I think the developer came up with a very creative way to develop this site in a way that I hope we see more in the future. I mean, just with the building materials, he's removing the curb cuts that would be on 20th Street and having all drive access from the alley, using pavers instead of big slabs of concrete down at the ocean front, and the quality product that this builder builds. I know this will be a very nice development.
Great, thank you. The next matter is agenda item number 5, and this is an application of Valvoline LLC for a conditional use permit for an automobile repair garage on western outparcel of 2105 Princess Anne Road in the Princess Anne District.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is R.J. Nutter. I represent the applicant. I want to thank Dr. Kwasny and the rest of the commission for placing it on the consent agenda. It's a pleasure to be there. And the conditions are all acceptable, and we look forward to this new facility. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Is there any opposition to this being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chairman has asked Commissioner Kwanzi to read this into the record.
Thank you, Vice Chair Oliver. This is a request for a conditional use permit in the Princess Anne District for an automobile repair garage, specifically a Valvoline oil change facility. The concept plan depicts a 2-bay garage not facing the right-of-way. Vehicular ingress and egress is proposed via 1 point of access from the interior of the site. No direct vehicular access will be on Princess Anne Road. A 4-foot-tall decorative wrought iron style aluminum fence with brick columns, along with a mix of flowering and evergreen trees, is proposed along the right-of-way frontage of the site. A mix of shrubs and trees are depicted along the side of the bay doors to assist in screening in the area. The Transition Area Committee reviewed this plan at its meeting in May and found it favorable to the site. The applicant worked with staff to ensure that, as required by the recorded proffers, the quality and architectural style and exterior materials of the structure would be similar to the larger shopping center in the area. The proposed concept plan depicts plant material in excess of the minimum, which will also add to the amenities on the site. As recommended by the comprehensive plan, the applicant has submitted a preliminary drainage study to the Development Services Center outlining the proposed stormwater management strategy for the subject site. As a result of the review, DSC concurs that the proposed conceptual stormwater strategy has the potential to successfully comply with the stormwater requirements of the site. Staff finds the proposed use acceptable, recommends approval, and the planning staff puts it on the consent agenda.
Thank you.
The Planning Commission, sorry.
The next matter is agenda item number 6, and this is an application for a conditional use permit tattoo parlor on property located at 1860 on Laskin Road in the Beach District. Is there a representative for this application? Good afternoon. If you'll state your name for the record, please.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, honorable members. My name is Daniel Singh.
Great, thank you. And are the conditions set forth in the application agreeable to you?
Yes, they are.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any opposition to this being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chairman has asked Commissioner Hodson to read this in.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. The applicant currently operates a beauty salon within a shopping center near the intersection of Hilltop and First Colonial Road. A conditional use permit for a tattoo parlor is requested in order to offer permanent cosmetic makeup services known as microblading to its clients. No changes are proposed to the exterior of the building or the existing signage. The proposed conditional use permit for a tattoo parlor is consistent with the comprehensive plan's land use policies for the Hilltop area. Staff recommends approval of this application, subject to the conditions. The commission agrees, and we have placed it on our consent agenda.
Thank you very much. The next matter is agenda item number 9. Northampton Development, LLC. This is an application for conditional rezoning RD 5D Residential District to conditional B2 Community Business District on the property located on the north side of Northampton Boulevard, adjacent to and east of the Premium Outlets Boulevard in the Bayside District. Hello.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Again, for the record, Eddie Burdon, Virginia Beach attorney representing the applicant. With me also today is Mr. Billy Milligan with the Livas Group, who is the architect on the project and also representing the project. I want to thank Mr. Frankenfield, Kathy Warren in the SGA office, and Mark Shea for their work with us on this project, and greatly appreciate being on the consent agenda. It's proffered rezoning with the proffers that you'll be approving. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to this being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chairman has asked Commissioner Redmond to read this into the record.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant proposes to develop an approximately 250,000 square foot commercial shopping center on approximately 33 acres of land. As the property is zoned R5D Residential District, which only permits residential uses, a rezoning is required in order to develop the site with retail uses. The proffered conceptual site plan depicts a series of detached buildings along Northampton Boulevard and Premium Outlets Boulevard with surface parking proposed within the interior of the site. There are 5 points of vehicular access, including a connection to Tolliver Road, which is currently under construction, a right-in, right-out connection on Northampton Boulevard, and 3 ingress and egress points along Premium Outlets Boulevard in Norfolk. Any development project of this size and complexity is bound to be second-guessed. But in the end, the commission agrees with staff that, quote, the B2 Community Business District is the most compatible, complementary, and efficient use of the land in such close proximity to the outlet mall. The staff obviously recommended approval. We're unaware of any opposition to this application, and the Planning Commission concurs with the staff's judgment. Consent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The next matter is agenda item number D1, BHC LLC, an application for a conditional rezoning B2 community business to B4 mixed use and a conditional use permit multifamily dwellings on property located at 3739 Shore Drive in the Bayside District. Hi.
Once again, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, thank you. Eddie Burdon, Virginia Beach attorney representing the applicant. We appreciate, first of all, Steve Bouchard, principal, is here with us this afternoon. We appreciate being on the consent agenda. The Ocean Park Civic League has been briefed on this, as well as the Bayfront Advisory, and appreciate all the hard work by Mr. McNamara as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to this being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chairman has asked Commissioner Redmond to read this into the record.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a conditional rezoning and a conditional use permit to develop the property with 6 residential condominium dwelling units within 2 buildings. One of the buildings, containing 4 dwelling units, will front along Shore Drive. The existing curb cut along Shore Drive will be removed. The second building, containing the remaining 2 dwelling units, will front along Pendleton Avenue. Vehicular access to the site is proposed along the southern property line from Pendleton Avenue. All of the units will be rear or side loaded. The parking spaces will not be visible from the rights-of-way, but rather will be located on the interior of the site. Each of the 3-story buildings will be 35 feet in height. Each will either have a rear or side loading 2-car garage. The front facade will feature multi-level porches and exterior building materials of cement fiberboard siding on the first and second floors and cedar vinyl shakes along the third floor. Board and batten siding is located on projections and gable ends. Colors of all materials will be a combination of earth tone colors indicative of coastal communities. In short, this is a high-quality development project, well-designed on a small and funky lot, which is not easy to do. The staff recommended approval. We're unaware of any opposition to this request, and as a result, we have placed it upon our consent agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The next matter is agenda item number D2, and this is an application for a conditional use permit for Halley's Property LLC.
Deferred that one.
No,
No, we didn't?
I don't think so. No. Automobile repair garage on property located at 4300 Virginia Beach Boulevard and 417 Thalia Road, located in the Lynn Haven District. Is there a representative for this application? Did I say, D3? Did I say D3? Oh, I'm sorry, it's D3.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, and members of the Commission. My name is Grady Palmer. I'm an attorney. I represent Discount Tire in this application, and with the removal of condition number 5, we are in agreement with all the conditions.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any opposition to this being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chairman has asked Commissioner Inman to read this into the record.
Thank you. This is an application for a conditional use permit on the northwest corner of Virginia Beach Boulevard and Thalia Road in order to operate an automotive repair garage, as the category is called. And it's actually a proposed location for Discount Tire, which would construct a new facility on that site. The submitted elevations depict a single-story building with brick veneer exterior. Brick accents are proposed in contrasting colors to provide architectural interest. Siding for the gables and dormers will be white 8-inch wide metal wall panels. Roof depicted as a gray standing seam metal roof with 12-foot tall storefront windows. The conceptual landscape plan depicts street frontage plantings in excess of the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance. And in addition, the required foundation landscaping is depicted on the plan along the front of the building. An existing neighborhood sign for Thalia is proposed to remain on the property. This property has had, in its zoning history, has been an automotive repair facility in the past. There are 11, well, there's proposed 12 conditions. There will be 11 upon deletion of number 5, which has to do with the doors remaining closed, garage doors that are up on the facility, which do not face any thoroughfare. So we have put it on the consent agenda, since there's recommendation by the staff also for approval with the deletion of number 5.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that was our last item on the consent agenda, and I would like to move that we approve items number 1, 3, 5, 6, 9, D1, and D3.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Hodson. You're ready to vote.
Bob, one second.
Oh, Dave?
Item number 2, I need to abstain, I'm sorry, item number 3, I need to abstain from the applicant is a client of mine.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to abstain from agenda item number D3. I have a piece of property under contract with the applicant in another location.
Okay. Any other conflicts? None? You have noted those? Okay, thank you.
By a recorded vote of 9-0, agenda items 1, 3, 5, 6, 9, D1, and D3 have been approved by consent. D3 approved as modified, with Commissioner Wiener abstaining from item 3 and Commissioner Redmond abstaining from item D3.
You don't have to thank anybody. Thank you. For those who have not left, I wanted to thank all the folks that came for these items on the consent agenda, And thank you for your time, and we look forward to your cases going before City Council for final approval and development. The next order of business that we'll address today will be the items on our regular agenda, and it appears that we have two matters. One is item number 2. Would the Secretary please call this matter?
Yes. Item number 2, an application of VA Finishing LLC for a conditional use permit automobile repair garage on property located at 4990 Euclid Road in the Bayside District. Would you state your name for the record, please?
Good afternoon, Chairman and Commission. My name is Julianne Smith of DeLima Law. I'm the attorney for VA Finishing LLC. I'm also here with the applicant, Mr. Glenn Martin, a co-owner of the business. We're here to ask for a conditional use permit for an automobile repair garage. I would like to have Mr. Martin say a few sentences about the nature of the business.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, thank you everyone for being here, allowing me to for this application. But my name is Glenn. I'm the co-owner. Just decided to start up a shop here with my brother in Virginia Beach. Was born in Kempsville, lived here almost all my life, and we're applying for the automobile repair garage permit due to the fact that we have a tire machine and wheel balancer. But I want it to be known that we are not a full service shop, meaning that I'm not going to be working on vehicles in that capacity and have a lot of cars and stuff sticking outside. Our customers are just going to drop off the items that need to be worked on, and some of them are wheels because we do polishing and powder coating, and they have tires on them, and I'll take them off, and put them back on in the shop. But no vehicles worked on at the shop.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant and his attorney? Thank you. We'll, the way this process works, there'll be people to speak against it, and then we'll have you back for rebuttal, and then we'll close the hearing and talk amongst ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we have 2 speakers in opposition. Shane Vassar.
Good afternoon. My name is Shane Vassar, and I'm representing myself and several of my neighbors in Pocahontas Village. We're neighbors to the spring building property where VA Finishing is going to be. And I have a signed letter from my neighbors that couldn't be here. I'd like to submit that here. Okay. And I have one signed copy, and if you need it, I have an unsigned duplicate. Would you like that also?
No, this is fine, thank you.
All right. Okay, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I object to this application for conditional use permit for the automobile repair garage for VA Finishing in the spring building for the following reasons. The noise associated with this business would include pounding, banging, grinding, sanding, vibrations, etc. It would add to the already high level of disturbing noise coming from the spring building every day. The noise has a detrimental impact on my quality of life. Approving this application would set a bad precedent that would open the door to other similar businesses setting up shop right in back of my home. Disturbing noise already comes from the other shops and businesses loading and unloading their trucks between 7 a.m. and 11 a.m. every day, operating loud machinery, and from the emptying of the trash dumpsters in the middle of the night, every night Monday through Friday. Allowing this business to expand would add one more trash dumpster to the building's parking lot. Since I am the spring building's closest neighbor in the adjacent residential neighborhood, I live to the east wing of the spring building, I will be most affected by the addition of another loud noise generating business. There are already 3 large dumpsters placed along the fence line bordering my property. The noise from the side of the building that VA Finishing occupies can be heard on my property because it echoes off of the buildings on the other side of the railroad tracks. It would help if the existing businesses in the building would close their garage doors to lessen the noise when they work. I strongly believe that the noise levels coming from the Spring building are already in violation of the city's noise ordinance. This conditional use permit will only add to the noise and further denigrate my standard of living. I have to wear earplugs so that I can go to sleep at night and throughout the day when the noise gets bad. The parking adjacent to the Spring building is limited and already overcrowded. The addition of this repair garage will push more congestion into the parking area directly behind the fence along my property. This creates an overbearing visual presence because equipment parked there are taller than the fence. I can see and hear everything that happens at the building's eastern side. Let me expand on the dumpster problem. There is an ongoing problem with the noise from the dumpsters being emptied every morning between about 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. Monday through Friday and disturbing the peace of the neighborhood. There are 4 dumpsters on the property which I can hear being emptied at night, 3 of which are right up against the fence on my backyard. The neighbors and I are awakened by trash dumpsters being emptied all through the wee hours of the morning. We are awakened by the noise and cannot get back to sleep. The noise created by the emptying of the dumpsters is loud like bombs exploding. We have to wear earplugs every night to get to sleep. And from inside my home, the disturbing noise from the building, afternoon and night, 5 or 6 days a week. It's almost around the clock. In conclusion, I object to the approval of this conditional use permit for VA finishing for the reasons I have presented here. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker, Mr. Horsley?
Could you take the pointer there and show us where you live?
Yes. Is it here?
Mm-hmm.
My property is about right in here.
Okay. Is the first house?
From about here.
Is this house?
Facing the east side.
It's going to be one of these, isn't it?
And my other neighbors that I've given the letter for, one lives here, one lives here, one lives here, and across the street, and right there.
So
where's
these noises that you're having, that you hear, are they, you say at nighttime too?
Yes.
The businesses stay open at night?
Sometimes they do. Not regularly, but I would say every week or so, there's somebody working there at night.
Because our packet says from 10 to 5, Monday through Friday. Is what the applicant is
The
requesting.
applicant.
Uh-huh. Is what our applicant is requesting.
Well, some of the businesses do work at night. They push the envelope. The owner of the building has told me that it's, people there are only supposed to work during regular business hours, but the occupants that have businesses in the Spring building do go out, work outside of those hours.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Redmond.
I'm sorry, would you grab that pointer again? I couldn't quite do it. Show me, put it right on your house, if you would.
See, there's trees here, then you can't really see the house. But
Right
it's
about there.
Right there, right. Okay, there's my house right there.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I share the longest property line with the Spring building of all my neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
Mike Inman.
And while we're pointing, if you would point to where the dumpsters are on the photograph, if they'll pull that back up, the overhead photograph.
Well, the dumpsters are about, there's one right there, and there's one right there, there's one right there, and there's one on this side of the building. And if you want to put the photograph back up, I can show you there too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is, right. Okay, there's one there, there's one there. And they've added one since this, oh, there's one behind these two. There's one there, and there's one there, and it's behind. Which I don't think it showed up in the picture. About a year ago, about two years ago, the dumpsters used to be here. This is an old picture. Okay, old businesses moved out, new businesses moved in, and they moved their dumpsters to right behind the fence, right here. And there's a third, okay, these are two really big dumpsters. And there's a third smaller dumpster right there. And then there's another dumpster that's over around here. It's more of a problem for my next door neighbor that lives here. Okay.
Dee?
What businesses are located on your side of the property?
Okay, this is a pool construction company.
Mm-hmm.
These two suites here. This suite, this suite here is, I think it's a furniture storage business. Let's see, this one here is a appliance installation. It's Perez Enterprises. They're loading and unloading their trucks every morning. This suite here is vacant at the present time. There was a wrestling venue there that set up business last year up until I think January, February of this year, which was bothering us. They're not there now, but this suite is vacant, and it is both. You know, they've got the owner of the Spring Building is advertising that it's open for leasing. And this suite right here is a company that renovates crawl spaces. These are their back entrances, which are garage doors, and these are the front. Each of these businesses has a front office entrance on this side of the building. And this is where the auto VA finishing wants to be. But the noise from this side of the building does it. See, there's buildings over here which are they're sheet metal, and the acoustics. Due to the acoustics, the noise from here bounces off these walls and comes into our neighborhood.
Thank you.
So we're sort of surrounded on all sides.
Any other, David?
Are the businesses actually working late at night, or is the dumpsters just being dumped late at night?
Well, some of the businesses work late at night, not on a regular basis, though.
Okay.
But it's the dumpsters that are being emptied during the night. Well,
How many times a week does that happen?
Every night.
Every night?
Every night, Monday through Friday. Yes.
It's expensive.
And the reason that they've told me that they have to dump at night. See, I've called the. I've talked to the individual business owners. I've talked to the owner of the building about these problems, and I've also called the dumpster. Because what they said, well, we don't have any control over when they empty the trash, so you have to call them. So I looked up each of there's about 4 or 5 different companies that empty trash there every night. And so one truck will come like 2 o'clock, another truck will come at 3. Just by the time I get back, I get back to sleep, another truck comes in. But during the day, the parking lot is so congested with cars and vehicles and storage, trailers, that the trash companies say they can't get in to dump the trash. So they have to do it in the middle of the night. And I have asked them why can't you do it in the early evening? It's better to be disturbed during our dinner hour than it is when we're trying to sleep. They say, well, we'll do what we can, but, they really haven't resolved that problem.
Any other questions?
You said there was, I'm sorry, 3 different trash removal companies?
At least.
So they're not just using one?
No.
To do them?
No, each dumpster has his own company that picks it up.
So what you're saying is that these businesses that face the alley, if you will, their employees are parking back there during the day?
Yes.
Is that how most of those businesses access their space, is through the back?
Yes.
So when they're there and they're working, the dumpster people don't have room to navigate through there and empty those dumpsters during the day?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that's why that area is crowded.
Yes.
Okay.
That's good.
And during the day, this part of the parking lot is also filled with cars as well.
Okay, I think we have one more speaker, is that correct?
Yes.
Let the next speaker speak, and we may have some questions for you, and then we'll let the applicant have the last word.
All right, thank you.
William Vassar.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Commission. I'm the owner of the property we were just discussing.
Would you please
And
state your name for the record?
William Vassar.
Thank you.
I can attest to the most of these comments by the previous speaker. Unfortunately, we don't have a civic league that can defend these use permits, so we're left on our own. Also, the neighbors on either side couldn't attend. One owns a 7-Eleven, and he has a big meeting with the company meeting today, and the other one is a Navy guy who says his chief wouldn't let him come in to speak. He wanted to speak, especially since he has small children, and these trash emptying at 3 o'clock in the morning are upsetting him and his children. He's got a small baby who wakes up, and they have to get up in the morning and take their children to child care because both are in the Navy. Also, I've witnessed, like I said, most of these disturbances. Trucks with backup whistle, wee 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 wee, you know, in the morning, 7 o'clock, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. Also, trucks loading and unloading, dropping things. It's noise throughout the day. They also had a wrestling venue that had music till 11:30 at night, which disturbed all the neighbors. Shouts from the crowd. Noise from a machine shop who felt that they want to share their noise with the community, open their garage doors, and noise from the machinery. A crawl space business that has loading and unloading from 7 to 11 a.m. A pool company which has illegally extended their that area, which is about 30 feet from the building to the fence line. They're using it as a stockyard. Well, that was I believe it's an illegal stockyard. Also, the emptying of the dumpsters. Unfortunately, I haven't witnessed the 3 o'clock in the morning, but I've been there during the day when there's been a dumping, and man, it is loud. Used to be they had the small containers. Now they got these huge containers.
Mr. Vassar?
Yeah.
We have a timeline on speaking, so could you wind up for us, please?
And of course, the noise from the drills, the saws, and cutting the towels for the pool. Okay. The owner of the building has little control of the infractions of the leases, and of course of the lease's employees. Additional noise from this repair garage will only exacerbate the conditions. I believe that the VA finishing should move to accommodations that are more amenable to the to an auto repair shop. Therefore, I recommend disapproval of this request.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of Mr. Vassar? Dave?
Same question. Can you point to where you live?
Beg your pardon?
Can you point to where you live?
It's the same situation in the back. Well, it's hard to see. But if you saw the distance between, it used to be, nowadays you have to have a big buffer. But at one time, he only needed 25 or 30 feet, and that's what that is. There's parking, there's a shop back there that has extended their, they've got all their pool crap out in the parking lot. They've fenced it off.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Yep, appreciate it.
Any other questions for Mr. Vassar? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
Can I ask a
David?
question of staff real quick before we listen for rebuttal?
Sure.
Without a condition, there is no, if you don't have a condition, there is no time frame for a dumpster, for a truck to come back in there and dump a dumpster, is there? I mean, the city, no, I'm sorry, I'm asking staff, sir.
So we did, there are no conditions, there are no conditional use permits others in this facility. And it appears that all the operations are permitted. But it seems to me there's some reasonable expectation of quiet and enjoyment of your home.
I agree.
So what I can promise you is that we will look at the bulk storage issue. That may be, our zoning administrator unfortunately is not here. And there are other ordinances related to noise and construction, so we'll, I don't off the top of my head have an answer to your question, but I believe it warrants some inspection and some research, and we will take that on for this site.
Okay, perfect.
Rebuttal time.
Thank you. I can only speak to VA Finishing itself and the things that it controls. I can't speak to the actions of other businesses or the management of the building services. But VA Finishing's use of the corner of the building, which I want to point out is opposite from the residential section, is consistent with the surrounding uses and the character of the area. In addition, there is minimal sound effect. The applicant is agreeable to all conditions, which included that all work would be done internally in the business and that the door would be closed. We also submitted evidence of the sound coming from the business. We ran tests with all the machines running. We submitted evidence of that, and there is minimal sound coming from the business, even with all the machines running. So this, I would emphasize that the sound issue from VA Finishing itself is not an issue. And we would ask that the commission please approve. Thank you.
Any questions? Don, we have one question.
Could you point to where the dumpster that this facility will be using is going to be located?
I'm not sure. I think that's one of the services that the building manages. Do you know?
Yeah, if we applied for.
Can you show us on the map?
If we applied for one, there are dumpsters that are located here already in front of me. I can see it outside of my window, but if I apply for one, or when I apply for one, it'll be placed out on this side here. And there's a railroad, and then it's open area at the Tapco petroleum supplier over there.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
So you have a business there now, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what do you do for dumpster now?
Oh, for dumpster now,
Sir, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, come up here. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, yeah.
I'm sorry, I should have said something.
There's a photograph of
Yes,
the
Dave.
dumpster
Yeah,
that he's talking
so-
about in our
Yeah,
materials.
and it's up there, So do you use the dumpsters that are up there now?
No.
You don't?
There you go.
No, we have
There's
very
it right
minimal
there.
trash right now. I mean, if
Okay.
I have a bag, I'll just.
Is
So
one of
far,
those
I've been
yours?
taking it home until I. Yes, I'm sorry?
Is one of those dumpsters yours?
No.
No.
Those are not mine right now.
Just said
Not yet. But if I do, when I do apply for one, it'll be.
I have a question for you. Your counselor said that well, I think she said, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do those dumpsters, are they run by the landlord of the building?
That was my question.
No, we're when I signed up for the place, she gave us information as to
About
who
who
we
to
can
call.
contact,
Okay.
yeah, to set
So
it.
each tenant is responsible for their own dumpster, should you, and they provided you a place to put it.
Yes, it'll be
Okay.
along that side, which is,
It's on the side.
yeah, just.
Well, it's a dumpster pad, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other questions? Jack?
So you stated that, primarily, or, pretty much all of your business will be enclosed inside.
Yes.
I mean, it's all done within the building. I mean, you may leave your door open, but at times,
Yeah,
depending on the
occasionally if
weather.
I need to open the door, but
Right.
primarily, and I'm very conscious about, making noise. I don't want to be obtrusive to anybody. And my unit is closed for the most part. I don't need to open it unless somebody's dropping something off, which if a customer comes by, typically it's very quick. Drop off, take the unit, and then work on it. Inside the shop, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Others? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no questions of any of the applicant or the opposition, we will close the meeting to the public and open it up amongst David.
Well, first off, I have enormous sympathy for the two gentlemen who spoke. I don't want to have to stick earplugs in my ears in the middle of the night in order to sleep. And I think the staff has been quite clear and earnest in their desire to try and help you figure something out about that. Be all that as it may, I don't know that that has anything to do with this application. This applicant is on the other side of the center in a unit with minimal noise. If he gets himself a dumpster, it's not going to be in the location that causes these two gentlemen and their neighbors some harm, it would appear. And I don't know why on earth we would penalize this business for conditions that occur from some other tenant or some other business. It just doesn't seem to me to be fair. So I'm going to support the application, would encourage others to support the application. That is not a reflection on the trouble that you all have. I hope that gets worked out. I just don't think that this business is responsible for it, nor need be penalized for it. That doesn't strike me as a way to solve that problem, and I do hope it gets solved. Thank you.
Jeff?
I have to agree with Dave. I don't really buy that the dumpster companies can't come at other times. We condition applications all the time where we say dumping has to be done between these hours, and it seems to be accommodated. If you're okay with this, your district, I would just, for peace of mind, just add a condition here saying if he does get a dumpster, it'll be between these hours, just so that there's no chance of him adding to the issue of, which I know he's quite a ways away, but since we condition that quite a bit for dumpsters, you see an issue with doing that on this one?
Yeah, I am open to that, and I think we could probably talk about that. But is this the only business then? You guys, I think you said, staff, that all the other uses were permitted uses. There are no other conditions, so there's nothing else. I don't want to penalize them. I'm the only one, but
Right.
these, the ones that require conditional use permit, that strikes me as reasonable.
Yeah.
Hours? We would have to get some consultation on that.
Yeah,
I'm always reluctant to make stuff up like this on the
that's why I
fly.
don't
I tell you what, let's do this. I would prefer that, now that that is a part of the record, that be, staff explore that as a part of the ongoing process. Should this, when city council takes it up, that does strike me as something that would be appropriate. But I don't want to just grab numbers out of thin air and have them be arbitrary without any real consideration to it. I want it to make sense. And they can do that in the time between now and city council. Does that work for you?
Yep, perfect.
Carolyn? What's that look mean? You okay? Okay.
Mr. Wall, Jack?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I support the application also, but I am very sensitive to the opposition with the dumpsters, because I must live a half a mile from the nearest shopping center, and I can hear those things at 5 a.m. I mean, it is loud. So, I mean, I feel for them. So I really hope the city takes a hard look and discusses this with the property owners, and looking at the bulk storage, and as well as the dumpsters, and being responsible to the residents that live adjacent to that business.
Okay, Mr. Redmond.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the application.
Have a second.
Second.
Second from Mr. Hodson. Call for the question.
By a recorded vote of 9-0, Agenda Item 2, VA Finishing LLC has been approved.
Thank you. The Secretary, call the next item, please.
Our next order of business is an application of the City of Virginia Beach for a modification of conditions, borrow pit fill on property located at 560 Oceana Boulevard in the Beach District.
Welcome, Mr. Adams.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Commissioner, members of the commission. Good afternoon, as the case may be. My name is Daniel Adams. I'm with the Department of Public Works. I'm the city's coastal program manager. I'm representing the department on this application to modify the permit conditions to allow for reclamation of the former borrow pit. Public Works desires to transition the site into a dredge material management area to allow for the disposal of dredge material from city navigation dredging projects and from stormwater management pond dredging projects. All of the material would be inert, non-hazardous, non-toxic material. The material is not suited to go to the general landfill because of the water content and the consistency of the material. It's better suited to go into a wet facility for consolidation and management, and therefore we don't want to mix it with other general construction debris, so it would only be for use from navigation dredging and stormwater management projects. Department does accept all the conditions staff has proposed in the application, and available to answer any questions or concerns you have.
Questions for Mr. Adams? Don?
Could you tell me if you don't have facilities like this, what do you do with the spoil?
With these facilities are very well suited. We would have to find a land area and dry it in the open land. It would require a much larger footprint. Would probably have more compatibility issues. And to take it to a landfill, a private or city landfill, they would have to designate a very large area for drying, set up a containment berm, de-water it, and handle it before they would be able to use it for daily cover at the landfill.
So this is by far the best scenario to dispose of this.
We have a similar operation ongoing just up the road at the old Whitehurst Borrow Pit on Oceana Boulevard, across from the Oceana Radar Dome Towers. So this is very similar. This is actually a better suited site because it's not connected to state waters. There's no defined outfall, there's no dewatering, and no discharge concerns downstream.
Thank you.
David Weiner.
Mr. Adams, correct me if I'm wrong, you are going to do testing or have done testing on the material just so it's not contaminated or anything like that?
We do testing of the material from all of the dredging projects for all constituents of concern, and all the tests we've done, they all passed. They're just general background constituents that you find in general fill in your backyard or anywhere else. There are no point sources of pollution in the Lynn Haven that have contaminated the dredge material in the Lynn Haven, and there are no sources of point sources of contamination for the stormwater material. It's the runoff that comes from our yards, our business, and our streets.
Right.
But we do test it, and like I said, we've seen nothing more than just background concentrations, nothing over any acceptable limits.
Okay, great, thank you.
Do you have a timeline? I mean, we're now into 2 or 3 years of dredging the Lynn Haven in various projects, and that, in my opinion, is one of the best things the city has done. We've got miles and miles of waterfront, and it's virtually impossible for private people to get dredging permits. I mean, so now the city's doing it, and I'm all in favor of that. How long will this facility be able to be used? Or do you anticipate a timeline?
It's going to be long-term, probably 10 to 20 years before we reach surface elevation and are ready to grade and close the site completely. The Oceana facility, like I say, we expected that we were going to get a little bit longer life out of that, but it's filling up quickly, quicker than we anticipated. One reason for that is the additional material we're receiving from the stormwater dredging program. That has really ramped up recently, so we're generating a lot of fill. We've got several different projects and contractors using that facility. It's very busy and crowded, and we do need some relief so that we can spread out some of the traffic that's occurring at that site and utilize this one.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Stand by. We'll let you have rebuttal. There are people to speak against.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there are 4 speakers in opposition. Buddy Lilly. Thank you. If you would approach the podium and state your name for the record.
Thank you very much for your time. My name is Buddy Lilly. I was the original owner up until last year of the pit we're talking about. The city ended up buying this pit against my will. I did not wish to sell this pit, but circumstances were I'd had no choice. My big concern here is I want to thank the engineering folks. They've been really great this morning to go over things with me, but we have some regress problems of coming and going. I had some questions on setbacks, which they are looking at. We had some questions on drainage in case of a lot of water, because we have had flooding before in the rear of this lake, which would be toward the Bird Neck Road area. Our neighbor, Mr. Sean Forsythe, who owns property there, was not notified that this pit would be coming and be filled right up to his large property line. He owns the Bird Neck storage right on Bird Neck, right past the golf course. Well, what's left of the golf course, thank you, going south. He was not notified. If you're aware, there's going to be a nice new battery factory put on the golf course. I do not know if this gentleman was notified. At least officially, we have tried to let him know otherwise that he's going to be building up next to a dump. Now, I shouldn't use that term because they have gone overboard to explain how they're going to do this. So I will ask a couple of quick questions and not take too much of your time. One, do you believe that there's going to be clean stuff coming out of a BMP? Do you believe that all the water channels in Lynn Haven are clean? Do you believe that they're going to like trucks carrying this muddy stuff coming from Lynn Haven to my house at 566? Is that going to be a problem on your streets? This is a few things we can take into account. Also, I'm very concerned with my neighbors over on Cradle Road and Bells Road. There will be some folks here to speak. They have been very good neighbors like myself. They have lived there for eons. I have been there since I was 3 years old, 1950. I'm old. I see you smiled. I am old. So that is my home. I farmed it. I shot birds on it. I drank beer on it. A lot of beer. But it is a beautiful lake. I do not want to see it go to this. The city built this lake, if you're not aware of that. 1985, 86, I let the city have the mineral rights for beach replenishment. Is anybody old enough to remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The city had a contract. They let it run out and left a large amount of sand in there, which we're coming to now, which Balio Sand Company came in there, removed the rest of the sand, or was in the process of removing it when the city shut us down. And for the record,
Where we have a time.
okay, I'm sorry, sir. For the record, those of you know Mr. Bio, he passed away last night.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know what it was all about. But I'm concerned with my neighbors. Last but not least, the city, when they took this property, got over 150,000 yards of prime beach sand, which Croatan could use. Now, they say you can't truck it there. You truck sand out of my pit for 2 years. You have trucked sand all the way from Bonnie Bright's. So if I've got to give up this pit and it's got to be like it is, at least take the sand out and try and help Croatan. Thank you so much.
Got a question?
Any more questions?
Jeff?
I'm just curious, do you know what the average depth of the lake is?
I'm sorry, sir?
Do you know what the average depth of the lake is?
27 foot.
Oh, thanks.
Depending on the rains. They have done an engineering study on it. Supposedly, their guys were in there to get the full depth of it. I'm sure that Mr. Adams can give you all that information, sir.
All right, thank you.
Do you still live close to the pit, to the area?
Pardon, sir?
You still live close to the area?
Yes, sir. There are 3 of us still living there who are on well water.
Whereabouts? Can you?
Yes, sir.
Get to a.
He's going.
I assume that is the lake right there. My house is there. Ms. Braithwaite's house is there. Mr. Hutchinson's house is there.
Okay.
And if you'll notice, Cradle Road comes right up to the line there. Bells Road is right over here, and all those springs are all connected.
How do you get to your house? What is your access?
I come in off Oceana Boulevard at 566. This would be me right along here.
So your lane runs behind the houses that face
Between lake and
Cradle.
Cradle, yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Lilly? Did I get that right, Lilly?
Yes, sir.
Buddy Lilly.
Yes, sir.
No more. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
You're more than welcome.
Next speaker is Everett Brown. If you could please state your name for the record.
Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, my name's Everett Brown, and I live on Bells Road. I'm very much opposed to the filling of this lake with this dredge material. And, you know, I've been in construction most of my life and have worked in the farming industry, as Mr. Horsley met me the other day, so certainly nice seeing you again as well. The material that's going to go in this lake, I really do not believe that we're going to have good, clean fill. Certainly not sand that's going to go back in this lake. And certainly concerned about the wells in the area. My family, most of my family still lives right there on Bells Road and have been since the early 1960s. They still maintain wells. There's a lot of wells still on Bells Road. They may not use it for drinking water, but they certainly use it to water their gardens and water their lawns, and some people still like their wells. Originally, when this property was purchased, there was a lot of talk that this property was being purchased because of the Southeastern Expressway, which has been an on-again, off-again project for many, many, many years. And so I'm very disturbed by the pretenses that this property was purchased. And then when we opposed the purchase of the property, we were told that it would be years and years and years before the city would ever do anything with it. Well, it hasn't even been a year, and we're already there, which we knew was coming. The amount of traffic that is on Bells Road and Oceana Boulevard is really horrific. You know, if there is an accident on the northern portion from Bells Road north, Oceana Boulevard shut down, and all that traffic gets diverted down Bells Road right through a residential neighborhood. The speed limit on Bells Road is 35 miles an hour. It shouldn't be. It should be 25. It's a neighborhood. And people, when folks get on Bells Road, it's like a launch pad, and they fly from one end to the other. Having more trucks, more city trucks, more dump trucks, especially hauling debris that has come from this dredging project is going to be odorous, and I certainly don't want to see it. Last thing that I have to say here is Mr. Redmond spoke, or maybe it was Mr. Frankfield spoke about that there was an expectation on the last thing that y'all just listened to of peaceful enjoyment of one's property. This property, the folks in this area already deal with the jets from Oceana. They already deal with the fire station on Bird Neck Road. They deal with all the traffic from the base, and not just Oceana, but Dam Neck. It's a cut through any way you look at it. And I don't think burdening the people of this area with one more project is really conducive to good government. It's really unfair for the folks that live in this area to have to undergo these sorts of burdens. The folks that live just on the other side of this, which recently was made a part of the SeaTac historic community, borders this property as well. And so you were all very concerned about that recently when there was a project proposed on Bells Road. And I would hope that you would give this equal consideration. And I certainly appreciate your time.
Any questions for the speaker? Thank you.
Milton Martin. If you would please state your name for the record.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I'm actually Michael Kelly. I'm the next speaker.
Okay.
And I'm speaking for Milton Martin as well. Thanks very much. This is actually a conditional objection. I'm the vice president for the Croatan Civic League. And when we heard that there was a potential for sand to be available for the Croatan Public Beach, we of course are very anxious about that. And it's simply a question of, we don't know if there's sufficiency or cost effectiveness in utilizing that sand for the Croatan Public Beach. So the question becomes, is there value there in maintaining that for use in the future? So that's our concern here, is we'd hate to see a valuable commodity in our eyes contaminated or at least being made unavailable in the time frame there is. And that's all I have to say about it.
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
That's it.
Is that it, Mr. Adams? Time for rebuttal if you would care to.
I'll go start with Mr. Lilly's comments. My understanding is that there was a sales agreement reached. The property was not condemned. He didn't say it was, but I didn't want anyone to feel like there was a condemnation action. It was a willing seller. The material is clean. It's soil. It's as clean as soil can be in that it's free of contaminants and hazardous materials, but it is liquid dredge material. The nature of the activity, we feel like it's similar to the truck and hauling activity that occurred when the private operator was utilizing the facility for the borer pit and sand mining operation. There is city water available on Bells Road and Cradle Road to the neighborhood. There are 3 residents that are on well: Mr. Lilly, Mrs. Braithwaite, and I believe the parcel fronting Oceana Boulevard.
Mr. Hutchins.
Mr. Hutchins, thank you. They are on wells. The recharge of the lake is from the surface water aquifer. Beneath that, there's a confining layer, and then there's the Yorktown Eastover aquifer, which your wells are drawing water from. So there will be no contaminated material placed in the lake, but if there was a large amount of contaminated material, it's not likely that it would transmit from the surface aquifer down to the drinking well aquifer. Mr. Kelly's comments, this project will not preclude our ability to renourish Croatan Beach. There are commercially available sources of sand. Our intention for the Croatan Beach project is a sand haul from a commercial sand pit. There is, we believe, some sand left over in the Lily pit, but we have no longer operating that or intend to operate that as a sand mining operation. The way that was operated, it was somewhat unique. It wasn't dewatered and mined in the dry like a lot of sand pits are. They hydraulically mine the material. And whether or not it's cost effective for Croatan, the bulk of the cost in hauling sand is in the extraction and the hauling, not so much the value of the material itself. But for us to explore this, we would have to do some extensive and expensive geotechnical work to determine the available amount of material. We'd have to reconstitute the permit with the state to operate the borer pit as a mining operation. That's been closed. We'd have to find a contractor or purchase a hydraulic dredge just to extract an amount of material for a single project. So no, we don't believe that's cost effective at all to delay using this for a dredge material management area for Croatan. There are other commercially available sand sources for that.
Any questions for Mr. Adams? Jack?
What kind of, is there permitting involved that the city has to go through with the state for this type of operation, or is it?
There are for any activity like this, there are environmental permits to be cleared. We've are getting jurisdictional determinations from the permitting agencies. The local wetlands board has replied back. There's no jurisdictional issues, no permit required, and we have heard from, I believe, Rebecca, DEQ.
Waiting on DEQ from the Corps.
Waiting on DEQ and their feedback from the Corps. We've been told that they are going to issue a letter of no permit required. The reason is it's not connected to state waters, which is why this is such an ideal location for dredge material disposal. The Whitehurst pit down the road was connected to state waters. So we had we're issued 2 permits, one for impacts to fringe wetlands from the Corps, and then the DEQ permit was for water quality. We were doing extensive water quality monitoring at that site because the water does discharge and drain out into the Linkhorn. But this is going to be a contained site. When we fill it over time, material is going to settle down to the bottom. Over time, it's going to cover the bottom. It's going to reduce the amount of recharge. The water surface elevation will actually lower. So we're not proposing any dewatering, and there's no environmental issues.
I've got a couple questions. The water that's in that lake now is coming from the ground and rain, a combination of the two?
It's spring fed. There's very little surface area that is directed to the pond itself. It's on a ridge. It's fairly flat. There's some, but what maintains the normal water surface elevation is the recharge from surface aquifer.
As you put dredge material in the bottom of the lake, will that stop the spring from filling the lake up, or does it come through that material?
It'll come through for a period of time, but as we add the fill depth, it'll cap that.
Eventually stop the water coming in. Now, another question. When you bought this property from Mr. Lilly, was there any conversation, or you may not know, but I mean, his house is right at the back end of that lake. Is what you're going to do radically different than what's been done and going on in this lake for years in terms of, they've been taking sand out with equipment, and there you're going to put stuff back in. Is there any major difference between those two operations in terms of noise and nighttime operations, daytime operations? If he continues to live there, is this any different than what's been going on for years there?
I believe it's similar in nature in terms of noise and activity. The only issue we have discussed that's dissimilar would be the nature of the material. When we do finally break the surface and we're in the final stages of filling, it's dredge the material that comes from tidal dredging. It has an odor that could be present while it's drying, but when it's underwater, there are no odor issues or concerns, but during that period of drying for the final filling, there could be a smell of low tide.
But you're talking about several years, aren't you?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not planning on filling this lake up in the next couple of years. You answered earlier that it might be a 20-year process.
Correct.
So in the dredge material that's coming out of the river is not going to be visible or have an odor for a while.
And we will be developing, like we did for the Whitehurst pit, a dredge management plan. And part of that plan could be that when we're in the final stages of filling and we break the water surface and the material is open for drying, to only allow material from the stormwater projects for the final placement. And that should mitigate most of the odor issues.
Karen,
I just wondered, at what point in the process does that occur? And how does that happen, that you could make that kind of stipulation?
We did that for Whitehurst, and the intent was after we get through the approvals and the permitting, we'll execute a work order with the engineer to develop a dredge management plan.
Okay.
And then over the 10 to 20 years it takes to fill it, we'll operate under that plan. And then in the final stages, we'll do a final grading and disposition plan to walk away from the site and grade it so there aren't any drainage or other issues, and stabilize it.
I have one, but go with Don first.
Don.
In terms of traffic, I mean, hauling out sand, it's truck traffic, dump truck traffic is, can get pretty thick. What are you in terms of filling back? How many trucks do you think? I mean, the dredging process is a whole lot slower than excavating sand, I would assume. Isn't that true?
It is. So the trucks, from a single project, the frequency of trucks is at peak efficiency is about 15 minutes apart. Because it's a function of how fast they can offload the material at the offloading site. And they're one truck at a time. But if we had multiple projects using the facility, there could be a higher intensity than that. One of the reasons why we need a secondary facility is we do have a pretty high level of hauling activity at the Whitehurst pit. So we want to take half of that activity and move it over to Oceana to spread that out. Or move it over to the Lily pit to spread that out.
Jeff?
If, let's say this doesn't go through, and you said you want to move some from the Whitehurst pit, do you have a backup other than this in place, or was this the backup?
This is the backup to the Whitehurst.
Is there another potential backup in there?
Not in the planning stages, but that's going to need to occur at some point in the future, and that's going to be a function of how much capacity and life expectancy we get out of these two facilities. So that would be very long term.
The material being underwater, in other words, you take it out of the Lindhaven, you carry it over here, you put it in the lake, it all settles down into the bottom of the lake. How long will it be before it's above the water surface now? I mean, you're talking 27 feet deep and what, 10 or 12 acres of lake? A lot of cubic yards of material can go in the bottom of this lake long before you get to the top of the water, right?
We're talking a couple of decades.
Couple of decades. So will you put this in the lake in any one particular place, or do you just take the truck and spread it out along the outside
Initially,
edge?
we intend on having 2 or 3 offloading locations just to separate the trucks so they can operate independently. You could just use one site because it is going to spread to the bottom. It's very, very fluid. Then down the road, when we begin to reach capacity and it breaks the surface, we alternate and add additional placement areas to allow for consolidation and drying, manipulation of the material to get maximum compaction and density and fill volume. And that's what we're in that phase at Whitehurst.
And that's 2 decades away. Okay, Jeff?
Do you have to go to capacity, or could you stay below the water line by a couple feet so that you could control the odor and the drying process?
We could. There might be other issues with the shallow water body, other water quality issues and concerns with that. If it's not spring fed, it's very shallow water bodies aren't desirable for a host of reasons. Yeah.
Dee?
Since there's only 3 houses that don't have access to city water, is that correct? In that area? If by chance, I know you said that it was slim, that the groundwater gets contaminated through this process, what is the availability of city water to these other 3 houses?
That's a good question. I mean, water could be extended to those 3 houses, but it's not, doesn't meet the utilities definition of being available because there's not a water main fronting those parcels. And even if there was a water main fronting along Oceana Boulevard, the distance of Mr. Lilly's dwelling is so far back where it wouldn't be a mandatory connection requirement. But you could run a oversized water service line from the existing city mains. There would be easements that would need to be obtained because there is no direct right-of-way with a water main existing to currently serve those properties. it could be engineered and it could be done, but the water is not currently available to those three properties with a direct connection.
Because, I mean, that's a real concern. I mean, you could say it's not going to happen, but if it does, then these three families are without.
There is a way water could be extended, but it's not currently available.
Because that would probably be something that we might like to look into maybe a little bit further, just for protection of those three families.
Very nearby. The water main runs down Bells Road to Oceana and loops into the neighborhood.
Mr. Weiner has a question for you.
I kind of know where it is, but where exactly is Whitehurst Pit at?
It's just, it's about half a mile north of this side on Oceana Boulevard, the same side of the road. If you know where the radar domes are, directly across the street.
Oh, okay. I know exactly where it is, okay.
Behind the concrete plant, yeah.
Yep.
Were you involved in the acquisition of this, or was it done through the city attorney's office?
No, sir, I was not involved. I believe it was done through the city attorney's office and Public Works Real Estate.
I'd like to ask the former owner, a question when we're done, because I want to, just got one question for him. Any other questions for Mr. Adams? Jack?
Is there, are you going to do any baseline water quality testing on the?
Sure.
On the water, not on the lake water, but on the potable water that services the three homeowners?
I believe we could, yeah.
Okay.
I think that service is offered to citizens currently, but we could certainly do that and document that.
That's fixable.
I know, but I want him
Want the city to fix it.
I want the city to step in on that one, yeah.
David Weiner.
One more question. Over here, going back to the Whitehurst Pit, 'cause I'm looking at it here on the Google Maps, and you've got, there's a beautiful street coming off of South Bird Neck. Houses are real close to that pit, and you have some businesses. Has there any been, how long have you been doing the Whitehurst Pit now? How long has that been going on for?
Dave, I'm going to say probably this is the 4th year of operation.
4th year?
Maybe longer.
Okay.
About 4 years.
Haven't had any complaints, concerns from any of the neighbors around there?
None that I'm aware of. There is one concern we've had, it's been ongoing, is with four-wheelers utilizing the site after hours. It's been a cat and mouse game. We've notified police, asked for their assistance, and they've done flyovers and patrols, and that's been a problem.
Okay. But I mean, no water issues, no smells, no nothing like that?
No tracking of mud on the roadway, no other concerns or complaints about the operation. No concerns about the city's operation.
Okay, perfect. That's what I was getting at. Okay.
Why, again, can't you keep using the Whitehurst?
We can. We will continue to use it.
But why use that exclusively? Why do you need the second one right now?
Because the number of projects we have that are in the queue to use it are backing up. We don't have enough areas to offload, and we have to alternate use of the offloading facilities to allow the material to dry and consolidate. There's not enough room at the end, basically, and it's going to have a useful life, probably maybe another 10 years of operation.
Okay.
And then at that time, then we're going to be looking for the next generation of dredge management areas to keep supporting the programs.
Other questions? I think we are done with questions. But I would like to ask Mr. Lilly a question if he would be so kind enough to come forward. When did the city buy this lake from you again?
The whole thing started about 3 years ago. There was a problem of who was going to pay for it. And we were shut down. At the time, Biosand Company was working there. They were shut down. And we went through a pretty close to 3-year program of excuses why we couldn't get no money. And I had a meeting with the mayor before the sale. I said, let me out of this. We'll work something out for the city on the front part for the expressway. And it was 3 years finally on my third lawyer that the city finally found some money. Now, during that time, they told Mr. Andy Fox from Channel 10 that BRAC money was going to be used to buy the pit with. As you know, that's a no-no. That's not even legal. Somewhere along the line, Waste Management managed to come up with the money, and I can neither deny nor confirm that it was money that was supposed to have gone to help Kempsville and Windsor Woods, as you all know, has been flooded terribly. I cannot deny or confirm that. This is what I was told by a little bird. So take it as a grain of salt.
Well, when they negotiated this contract with you, did they tell you what they were going to do with this?
They did not specify they were going to be a dump like we were doing. We were doing reclamation, which is putting back dirt, clay, in an area that's already been done. We had a permit, and we were governed by the state. They checked us every month on what we did there. Later on, after I had done signed the paper, I really found out when the late Mr. Bayo assured us that everything was fine, but it was some nasty stuff going to be put in the pit, and that it was downhill from there. I went to see the mayor to try and renegotiate and make sure the city still kept the peace front for the Southeastern Expressway, and they wouldn't even talk to me, sir.
So you were putting material back in there when you were?
We were putting material back in, inert, which would be dirt, clay, and again, we were checked constantly by the state.
Okay.
Mr. Schaefer, I believe is his name, was our inspector, our mining inspector, who kept tabs on everything there.
Okay, so what they're going to do, you were also doing to a degree. It was just different material.
Just different material, yes, sir. We had no intention of filling the whole pit. We were gonna, the end of toward North Oceana Boulevard, if you look at the map where we've been filling, we were gonna fill that across and add a couple of acres of land to the piece across the front. In the event the Southeastern Expressway did not go through, the city would have, or whoever owned it at the time, would have a road front plus a few acres in the back.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from Mr. Lilly? Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much for your time, and some of your folks here asked some really good questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you. If there are no more speakers, we'll close the public portion of this and debate amongst ourselves. Anybody have any comments, concerns, questions, motion?
I'll start. With the Whitehurst take going on now, and there's no concerns, the same material that's going to go down there, I'm sure our people are smart enough to do research and testing. They wouldn't go through with this if it wouldn't be testing. I do have a concern about the city, the people there, the 3 residents there not being on city water. And then again, I really don't have a concern about it, but kind of on the fence about that. But I'm going to tend to support it.
I do. That's the one concern I have, is that something happens to the well water, and I want to make sure that they are. There's a provision maybe put in there to make sure that they don't have a problem hooking up to city water, that there's not this stop hole and they're caught.
Yeah,
That's my main concern with that, because it's just small. It's not an entire neighborhood. It's 3 houses, and even if it's only one house, it's not being able to have clean drinking water. If something happens, and it might not, it might be just nothing ever happens, but I don't want them to get caught in a lot of paperwork.
And I got to say, I personally, that's why I'm on the fence, because I don't know enough.
I don't either.
To know about that.
Well, the truth is they're on wells.
Right.
The truth is if the water is contaminated, they can't use it anymore. So that's either going to not be a problem or it's going to be a terrible problem. And only time will decide whether that's a problem. What I'd like to ask Mr. Adams is there any way you could guarantee or warrant to us that if that water ever became a problem, you all would run a water line back? Because that's, I don't know how long it is, but that's thousands of dollars of putting a water pipe back to serve these people. I know it cost me $1,200 to run it 75 feet in my front yard, so this is probably several $1,000s or more to get it back there. What would happen if these folks came to you one day and said our water is now not drinkable, would you all participate in putting a water line back there? Or would you say, sorry, it's your problem?
Well, I will reach out to public utilities and find out what they have available for testing, and we can get the water tested and get a baseline, and then perhaps do some routine testing and monitoring to check on that. Also spoke to Public Works about the ability to provide water service to these houses should this happen, and it would require obtaining an easement from the adjacent property owners to run a water service line, which is possible. But yes, we can commit to exploring all of those remedies should the contamination happen. But again, it's highly unlikely given the separation of the aquifers and the fact that we have no known contaminated material sources coming from our projects.
It's understood. It's just, I think it's a nice reassurance as we move forward into the future with these projects.
And if, if our operation was responsible for fouling the wells, I would certainly think that the city would incur the expense to obtain those easements and extend the services.
Don, and then Karen.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of an assurance that the residents would have, and I'm like you, I don't think it's going to happen, not from the filling of this borrow pit, because, having experience with digging holes and whatever, and it fills in, and it fills up from the top, not from underneath. Once it seals off at the bottom, I'm aware of that. And the aquifer, I don't think in that section is. I would imagine the water table in that aquifer is probably 90 to 100 feet. I would guess. What I'm not sure.
Or more.
Or more, yeah. That's right. So we live where we are. We own shallow water. I mean, we can't find deep water where we are. We own that nasty water. If you want to know about that, we own 30-foot water, and that's nasty water. We treat that water like
eggshell.
We would like to have city water out there where I am, to be honest. But I don't think it happens. But that's where water aquifers are very, very funny. Whether you can go 20 feet one way and you can get into another aquifer and you got excellent water, and it just depends upon where you are. But I just think that this is a process that has been going on, and I don't think you can find a better group to monitor it than our own local officials. And it's something that has to take place. I mean, we got to find a home for this if we're going to keep our waterways clean and dredged out. We've got to find a home for the material, and with the monitoring and all that takes place by the government, I feel comfortable with it, and with the assurance that the city would do something if for some reason they cause these wells to go bad. I'm gonna support the application. I think.
David,
just to be the skunk at the garden party, because that's me. I don't understand this concern about the wells. I mean, this pit has been operated commercially for a very long time. I don't know what the city's talking about would be substantially different. Obviously, if there were some sort of damage, then, we would want to make sure that these owners are taken care of. But this, as the gentleman indicated, they've had material taken out, they've had material put in for, decades, and I don't know that that's, I just don't know why I would tend to believe that there's going to be something deleterious that would occur to their wells because we're putting river material in there, and I just don't see it. So anyway, I'm not concerned by that.
Okay. Karen, did you want to say something?
So I just want to make sure that when we talk about some kind of condition or assurance, that the language is to address the issues these families may face. So for instance, he said that he would work to get a baseline of water quality and then assure that they would commit to exploring remedies. So what you're really looking for is assurance that those people will be, an issue will be addressed. If an issue arises, it's more than exploration that you're looking for, right? You don't want them just to explore a remedy. You want them to explore and then apply a remedy. So that needs to be part of whatever language is included in it, that it's not just exploring a remedy that the people will then have to pay for on their own. And you had asked a question, Jeff, earlier. So I also thought that the dredge management plan that you mentioned could be applied to only allow for material for stormwater management at the point of fill, right? I think that's the way you put it. I don't know how, it's kind of a question for you again, so I'm sorry to bring you back up, but how would you didn't necessarily answer for me how we would know that that could be assured. So then when you said you would, you would also explore that, and that would be part of something down the line, and I just wanted to feel, I don't know.
Well, one of the conditions is we're going to develop the fill plan. We don't go into detail of the elements of the plan, but we absolutely are going to develop a fill management plan.
Right, that would include that it would only be from stormwater management ponds that would go in at the point of fill is what we were talking about earlier.
At the point of closure, if there are complaints about odor, we could restrict the source of material that's causing the odor.
So it kind of means being, ever diligent on it to make sure that that occurs, or I'm still wondering how.
Yeah, but you know what, Mr. Horsey can attest to this, just earth has odor to it when you till it up and disturb it.
Right, I know that too.
And I don't believe that this material is any stinkier than organic material that has some manure in it that's been excavated from a construction site. And
once again, how does that go into the dredge management plan for sure? How do you assure that that goes into the plan, that it's only stormwater management pond material? Because you said that's what you would look for, so I'm still wondering, because it sounds to me like kind of now you're rolling back, that's not necessarily what would happen, it's just something that might be considered.
No, I guess my response is, I think the odor concerns, I think, is overstated. We haven't had any odor complaints from our Whitehurst operation. We had a dredge transfer operation at Thalia behind Thalia Middle School in a public ball field. No concerns about odor. There was no tracking of material. It hasn't. We've had a transfer facility constructed in the Church Point neighborhood, and we've not had any. We've had a lot of concerns before the projects from people concerned about them, about odor and whatnot, but during the operation, we have not had any complaints about odor.
So you don't know that you'd include that or not?
If you're asking, should it be made a condition of the conditional use permit, we can discuss that and talk about how the appropriate language to put that in there.
Okay.
I'm very careful about not precluding the ability to use it for navigation.
So you might have to have that part of the condition, right?
That's the reason why we're here. The main reason why we're here is to be able to support that program. We have to have a place to dispose of this material. And, and we try to get them as far away from the residential concentrated areas as possible. And they don't, this is almost as good as it can get as far as a facility for this purpose. So
I would like to have some language in there in the condition, however you put it in there.
Okay.
Well, see, here's
and I also think that the language needs to be strengthened to address Dee's and Bob's initial concern, and I also had a question about flooding, because I think Jeff had asked that earlier, and this gentleman mentioned something about flooding at the back of the lake, and I just wondered,
certainly
to what degree is that a concern, or to what degree is that considered? The flooding. Can you address the question of that?
Whatever drainage issues had been ongoing, we're not changing the characteristics of the surface of the area. We're not adding impervious area. We're not changing the contours of the ground until we do the closure plan and we close the facility and grade it to drain. But during dredge material disposal operations, we don't expect any overflow from the site. According to Mr. Lilly, there was only that he could cite there was one instance of a storm event where the lake did overflow onto some adjacent property. So we discussed that this morning. One of the things we're going to address early on in our fill management plan is raising the berm on the east side where that overflow occurred. That's the lowest corner of the property. So we'll do some initial filling to get enough material to raise that elevation and create a containment berm. So those are the types of things that we're going to put into the management plan.
Got it. Okay.
Jack?
Got a couple things. One is, and maybe it's been mentioned before, but the like at the closure of the facility, because you've already discussed, I think the whole plan is, the dredge material on the bottom and maybe some storm water on top, when it's reaches the top of it. But like, what's the ultimate end of life. Once you're done with the facility, it's filled. It's
I don't know what the ultimate land use disposition would be, but when we're done using it for this purpose, it would be graded to drain, meeting all drainage ordinances and requirements, and stabilized.
Okay. Fair enough.
And then the follow-on use would be a future action.
Future action, the city.
One of the things that I'll point out to Karen, pulling water and bottom out of the Lynn Haven River is probably cleaner than cleaning out BMPs. They have hydrocarbons in them. Oil from cars go into those things.
So I didn't mention that.
And so when you take care of stormwater management, you're cleaning out a dirtier place than you might be if you're cleaning out the bottom of the Lynn Haven River.
Okay.
So
and I
if
don't know
you-
why that would have been offered as an option.
Well, it's an option because they've got
Because
to,
the concern was odor. That was addressing,
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
one way to
odor would
address
this
a
quality
potential odor
really?
concern.
Okay.
But they do test the material from the stormwater projects. They test them for a whole host of scary things, arsenic, barium, lead, and hydrocarbons. And from every project that's been tested, the limits were either non-detectable or within regulatory acceptable limits.
Is that why those would be advantageous?
It wouldn't be advantageous for that reason.
Okay.
But they wouldn't have the concern was, I guess, odor from the material from tidal dredging. But like I said, the general fill that's already been placed in there, we're more likely to encounter contaminated fill from general construction projects, road projects where there was a fuel station or a dry cleaner facility, but we just don't have those near our stormwater facilities or our waterways that we're dredging.
other questions? Thank you. So do we have a motion? Any, Mike?
I'll make a motion that we approve the application subject to an additional condition as follows, that the city shall provide city water facilities to adjacent property owners in the event that appropriate continuous testing of the groundwater reflects a need for an alternative drinking water source. And maybe drinking water is not the right word.
This is.
I can repeat that if you want.
You can repeat it, and I'll get in trouble perhaps, but the likelihood of us warranting, guaranteeing that it's going to happen is not going to happen.
Can't do it.
Not gonna happen.
On the city council side, and Dan and I have personal experience with Burton Station, where to guarantee water and sewer connections, we had to go to city council and get special permission because of the conflict with the utility bonds and the use of public funds.
In public right-of-ways.
In public right-of-ways. So the expectation of requiring this is unlikely. And as their planning staff, we would not support you adding that condition. It's pretty blunt, I apologize, but
Like a General Assembly question.
I appreciate where you're going. I think you have, it's certainly valid concern, and it's unlikely that the council would support binding a future council to that. There's numerous reasons why we don't support your condition.
Jack?
It's hard for me to say that, but I'm saying.
Could that condition possibly be that upon request of those that are on the well, those 3 homeowners, that the city would conduct baseline water quality testing of their, would that be acceptable? Upon request.
Just providing the testing.
Right, just a baseline, that's all, just to understand what the existing well.
I'll have to run that by the director and see if he's in support of that, but it sounds reasonable. Yeah, and prudent, yeah.
That way we know what it is now. I've got one more question for you, I think. You've been putting material in here since you've owned it?
No, sir. The city has not put any material into it, but it was originally excavated, basically a rectangular area, and then it was expanded to the south, and then the area to the north, where you see the City of Virginia Beach call out, that area had been filled by the prior operator and owner with general construction fill.
With general construction fill?
Well, I don't know what it is, actually, to tell you the truth.
Negative, it's gotta be dirt, clay, cannot be all in earth, it's all the state will allow us to have.
No debris.
Dirt, but I don't know if it was tested or what it consists of, I have no idea. No idea.
Yeah, well, back to the point, you feel like you can get, if we put a condition on you to do baseline water testing, is that something you can reasonably agree to?
Definitely would seek approval for that, yeah.
Okay, that looks like that's the best we're going to get today, Mike. Okay, Dave?
Can I just say, I think we've gone too far with this. I don't know where the doomsday scenario is coming from that these wells are going to be fouled. I mean, I don't know why we would assume that.
Well, nobody's assuming it.
No,
It's a possibility, so we're dealing with a possibility.
We have a motion to...
I don't know what would lead us to believe that that's a possibility, other than that we kind of made it up out of thin air. So I think, and I was disappointed with this baseline water thing, but I think we've spent now half an hour coming up with a scenario that none of us has any real confidence, or should have any real confidence in believing is going to happen. We just kind of cooked it up.
Well, I don't know that I agree with you, but I think we need to call for the question and have a second and hit the buttons. So do we have a motion to approve with a condition that our director says he can't support? So that means we have to modify our motion to either basically accept it the way it is and trust that the city will do their best to do some testing. That seems to me to be where we are with this. So I'll make a motion to approve it as submitted, and we'll call for the question. Is there a second?
A second.
David seconded, so we have a motion and we have a second.
What is
Hold
it? Are we voting on the motion? On what are we voting on?
Yeah.
I'm going to withdraw the motion I made.
We're going,
Okay, there we
my
go.
motion
Clear
is
that
to
up.
approve it.
Withdraw your motion. Perfect.
Yeah, okay, good.
Now we've got a second motion.
Yeah.
Second
My
motion is
motion
to
is
approve the
to approve
application.
it. To approve the application, we have a second in that. And trusting that Mr. Adams is going to do what he can to get his department to do baseline testing on this water.
That has to be a part of it, doesn't it?
That's not a condition we're adding, it's just.
Anybody not understand what we're voting on?
Already voted.
Pardon?
Already voted.
Oh, okay, didn't know it was open.
Do we have a second?
Yes, I second.
Thank you, Mr. Weiner.
Are we voting, or have we voted, or what?
Commissioner Hodgson?
It's not working.
You broke it.
Which one are you hitting?
The red one.
And
It's not working.
Mr. Inman, it's not working. Could I get your verbal vote? Commissioner Inman?
Nay.
Wait, I want to change. I hit the wrong one.
None of the reds are working.
Yeah.
Start.
We're going to try it again. Just bear with us. We're going to try and open a new vote and see what happens. Okay, vote is open.
Starting over?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So
By a vote of 6-3, by a recorded vote of 6-3, agenda item number 7, City of Virginia Beach, has been approved as submitted.
Okay, we have no more to hear today. So with that, let's see what I do next. Is there any further business? Mr. Planning Director, do you have anything else we need to
No, I do not.
deal with today? On behalf of my fellow commissioners, I'd like to thank everyone for attending today and staff for preparing excellent work. Meeting adjourned.
Yeah.